How's it going, Yankee fans? My name is Alex with my co-host here, Nick Nielsen. Today, we want to provide you with an injury update on a couple of bullpen arms. The Yankees, a couple of weeks ago, had some serious injuries kind of hitting us all at once. We had Chapman go down with the Achilles tendonitis, Jonathan Loaiziga with the shoulder inflammation, Chad Green with a little bit of Tommy John, and now we got some guys coming back. A lot of bit of Tommy John.
There we go. It's like a little bit of Tommy John on top.
Sprinkle of Tommy John.
Chad Green and Luis Hill. You know what they say? What is he? You shake it, and then you bake it.
Yeah, we're hoping that Tommy John stays far away from everybody else because we're still trying to get over those two injuries. And, we have some guys on the way back. We got Jonathan Loaiziga, who, said on his Instagram the other day that he's coming back. He was in Nicaragua attending to some family matters. Zach Britton's making a comeback. August is the projected timetable for him to return.
That's crazy.
Right. So maybe he can help, as a setup man to, close the games. I think I do want to have a short discussion about the closer situation that will be correlated to Eralus Chapman's return. And Domingo German, he's expected to have a 3-inning simulation, or really not even a simulation, a live action in the minor leagues to ramp up and see if he can, to see if he can make a comeback. So pretty excited to see his progress. What his role would be. Me too. I wonder what his role will be upon his comeback, but I want to discuss that. But first and foremost, I do want to discuss Eralus Chapman as the primary kind of return man. Like, what is his role going to be coming back? We've discussed this a little bit in the past in terms of, is he going to be the closer? Is he going to be more of a setup guy? I'm very curious of what he's going to do next. So what are you thinking about Eralus Chapman and his return?
I mean, it's hard for me to have all that much faith in the guy because of what we saw before he went to the IL. But like we talked about in one of the previous episodes, I was like, I do hope that Eralus' bad performances in May specifically, or I want to say it's May, like he left like second week of May. Yeah. So I want to say that his bad performances that month specifically before injury were because of his injury, and that's why he was struggling with the location. That's why he was throwing 93 and then sometimes 97 all over the place, and that's why a slider and splitter weren't good. But then I'm remembering this is just kind of how Eralus is sometimes. And it's the Eralus Chapman experience, but this time he's got punished for it a lot more. Like, Eralus always walks guys. Eralus always gives up home runs every now and then. Eralus has problems locating his stuff. But a lot of the time he got away with it because he was usually just so dominant and overpowering that a lot of guys could just sit fastball and still not be able to hit his fastball. Now that he's not throwing it as hard, and now that his slider isn't nearly as good and his splitter isn't nearly as good, everything just is pointing downward for Eralus. So, like, I want to see him get worked back into it. I don't want to see any situation where we're a 1-run, 2-run game when Eralus Chapman's in the game when he comes back from injury. Not for the first, few days at least, I'd say. And then we can see if he looks good, put him in a higher leverage situation. Don't you dare let him touch Clay Holmes' closer spot, though. That shit's been on ice. That if he takes Clay Holmes' closer status, and Boone's like Eralus really showed he had what it took. We're really liking the progress he's made. I'm going to lose my mind because this is Clay's job at this point. The dude is the best reliever in baseball, not named Josh Hader. In all of baseball. And there's even an argument that he is better than Hader, but I don't think so. I mean, some very, very diehard Yankees fans would be like, I'll take Holmes over Hader any day. But that's either way. When you're up there with Josh Hader as the best bullpen arm in baseball right now, you're doing something right, and you should be used accordingly. And if we're not going to use him in the closer, that's fine. If we just continue to use him in 1-run games in the 7th and 8th inning, sometimes both, because that's honestly more valuable than having him set and locked for a certain 9th inning role. Because that, as you know, the one thing I've never really liked about closers, we've talked about this a lot, is that sometimes the closer in a 1-run game ends up facing 7, 8, 9 in the lineup. And those are usually the easiest hitters that you have to face. So if it's in this 8th inning, though, however, that guy will be facing 4 or 5, 6, 7, 4, 5, 6, So that's why it's I don't love the set designations, but at the same time, I do not want to see Eralus given a set designation. I want him just to be there. You can be used like we used Wandy. Wandy takes your spot, you take Wandy's, everyone's happy.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good idea. Look, Chapman, we know what he is when he's at the top of his game. He's one of the best closers in baseball.
Yeah.
I personally, I think he was being impacted by that Achilles because his April numbers were great. He didn't give up a single run, had a 0.00 ERA. Then it balloons to, what is it? What is it now? 3.8 something.
But the only thing I don't like is that his expected stats and his underlying ones, like his Sierra and his FIP, are both over 5. So it's that ain't pretty. And like even in the month of
No.
April, he had like a FIP of like 3.7, 3.6 because he had that one game where he walked home the run against Baltimore. Then he had another
Right.
game where he loaded the bases and had to be pulled. Like Eralus has had his moments where it's just like, eee. But then he had that 0 ERA, so it's like he's doing the thing. That's what I'm saying. He was doing what he always does. He was getting by when making mistakes. And then in May, he just could not get by when he made those mistakes.
I mean, he lost all. You could tell though because like he lost control of his fastball and he lost control of his slider. And when that happened, it all fell apart. And then you kind of start to realize, okay, a guy like that, Hall of Fame, closer, just doesn't happen out of nowhere. That doesn't happen just out of nowhere. Like there has to be a cause for that.
You're right about that, man. You're right about that.
He started strong, so I think the Achilles definitely was impacting him, and his probably his form. Right, which then impacts his location. So it goes hand in hand. So
he also has such a very aggressive, and Eralus has always had such a very aggressive where he like stands like that, and then he gets that like massive leg kick, and then just throws like as hard as he physically can. That's why the dude's always drenched in sweat, wearing a turtleneck in 96-degree weather. Like Eralus puts his body through hell to get to the level he's at. So it's like hopefully you can figure it out, and I do think you're probably onto something with the fact that it's like his delivery, his timing, everything was off because of his injury, and it's an Achilles injury, so that shit nags and that's not comfortable, and it takes time to let that heal. So hopefully he comes back and he looks like a different version of himself. I'm sure we'll probably see him next week sometime because I believe isn't he pitching Saturday and like some sort of like what is it off the mound or like a bullpen session or something?
Yeah. I think
that's huge. That's huge. And then having Domingo Germán come back as well, as you alluded to in the beginning. Now that I'm a bit more nervous about than Eralus. Because like you said, with Eralus, it's either he comes back and it was the injury that slowed him down, or he comes back and it's just he doesn't have it in the tank as much anymore. And this is his last season in pinstripes. But with Domingo, it's like, I feel like I haven't seen this guy pitch in forever. I don't know what he has. He's never been a fastball dominant pitcher. He's always thrown his curveball more. Mm-hmm. So that's why we talked about this in the past couple episodes. Like that's why I think he'd feature better in the bullpen because he could kind of play off that curveball more for 2 or 3 innings at a time and only face the order once. And I think that's key. But I'm really nervous to see how he does in the simulated game. Because if he's hitting like 92, 93 miles an hour with this fastball and be like, that already was not a great pitch, and now it's slower and it's not as like having good as movement. Well, I don't know. There's a lot to see with Domingo. A lot of questions to be answered.
Yeah, so when it comes to Domingo, last year 4.58 ERA, over 98 innings, and he did not look altogether that good. Didn't look comfortable on the mound. 8.97 strikeouts per 9 with a 1.56 home runs per 9 rate, 70.1% left on base rate, and a 42% ground ball rate, which was the worst of his career, basically over a sample size over 15 innings. So
it's because he's truly, in my opinion, a 2-pitch pitcher, and his second pitch being his fastball is like a C+ overall pitch, in my opinion. So it's like, okay.
So here's my thing. Right, here's what I think about Domingo Germán. Last year, his fastball velocity dropped to 93.5 miles an hour. It was 94.7 back in 2018. So as you said, fastball isn't really his forte. He's not a flamethrower like some of these guys. His best pitch, curveball. He also mixes in that change up at 86.6 miles an hour, 22.3% of the time he threw that last season. Now, my thing here is the only way that I see Domingo Germán getting back to starting pitching quality is if he can incorporate. Well, if he's injured, so yes. The only way I can see him becoming a starting pitcher again, like a long-term solution for the Yankees after this season, I'm talking after this season, is if he incorporates a cutter into his repertoire. His fastball isn't good enough. His fastball isn't good enough. His curveball and changeup are great. They're very good pitches. If he can get some movement on his fastball, incorporate a cutter, even maybe mix in a sinker every now and then, like try to see which one he's better at, a sinker or a cutter, and then mix those into the equation. I think if the sinker is better, here's an interesting take. If the sinker is better than the cutter, if he starts to dabble with those two pitches, if the sinker is better, he goes to the bullpen. If the cutter is better, he remains a starter.
I like that. I
mean,
it's the Matt Blake effect.
Mantra. That's the Matt Blake effect.
All the stars have added cutters. Meet Matt Blake.
Exactly. So all the starters have added cutters, all of them. Every single starter has added a cutter this year, and all of the bullpen arms have added sinkers. Or not all of them,
he throws the sinker 14.5% of the time, which is very little, especially for when you look at when he throws his pitches. Like all in all, in last year he threw like over 1,500 pitches, 1,600 pitches. Only 200 of them were sinkers. So it's very minimal that he uses it. And the reason he used it, I like to think, is because it was one of those pitches that he had that could move in on right-handed batters. And that's why I think having a cutter would be huge, because that's something he could throw in on left-handed batters. He doesn't have a pitch that moves into lefty batters right now. He has a curveball, a four-seam, a changeup, and a sinker. And nothing cuts in on the lefty. So if he tries to throw something with a little bit more movement, they in the words of Joe's McFly, if Domingo shall hangeth, they shall bangeth. I mean, like, they just tee off on Domingo. He struggled with home runs, struggled with walks, gave up hard hit contact. All of his expected stats were worse than his actual stats. That's one thing I've never liked about Domingo, is that he goes out there and posts a 3.2 ERA, and you're like, okay, like, that's good, because that's the stat that really matters. But then you look at the other stats, like, and it's like a 3.9 FIP and a 4.2 SIERA or whatever, and you're like, all right, so you're not doing as well as it looks like you're doing. And the things that scare me about that the most is just regression. Like, if Domingo has a 3 ERA in August, and it says he should have a 4.5 by the end of the season, I'm going to probably trust the fact that he should have a 4.5 at the end of the season. So I'm afraid to see Domingo come out there and then be like, yeah, we're going to use you as like our spot starter, as our long relief guy. And then him get a lot of opportunities when he really hasn't earned or deserved them. So it's like, I want to see how he does in the simulated game. I'm sure they'll probably give him another simulated game after this one to make sure he's looking good. I mean, all the pitchers have had numerous games before they even toss back on the roster. And the thing is, with Domingo, it's not like he's some like deeply necessary piece of this team that we need to have back right now. So they're probably going to take it slow with him. And who knows, he could have a Strasburg-esque situation where he just has some tightness and he got to be shut down again. Like, I want to play it safely with Domingo, because while our bullpen is a little bit depleted, the guys that we've asked on to step up have stepped the fuck up. So it's like, I don't even want to take away from them. Like, Wandy had his worst outing yesterday, and he didn't even give up a run. He just gave up a hit, and then they took him out for a lefty batter, or Taylor Walls, a righty, who's terrible, by the way, like one of the worst hitters in baseball. I don't get why we pulled him, but then King just got him out easily. So it's like, the bullpen, like you said at the beginning of the episode, King's starting to find it. Once Eralus comes back, he's going to have, Manny B. Like, his cutter is really good. Domingo.
That's what I'm saying.
You're definitely onto something with that. I like that idea a lot. Even if he's in the bullpen, give him a cutter. Just give him something that can move more, or tell him to say, fuck that fastball, throw your sinker instead. And I think the results would speak for themselves. I mean, I will say also, hindsight, this episode, a little bit tough to talk about these two people, the two scumbags on the Yankees team. Like, why this episode should be called like the domestic abuse episode coverage for Eralus and Mingo.
Jeez Louise.
But no, yeah, these guys, sure, they suck as human beings, but if they come back and pitch well, I'm going to cheer for them on the Yankees because they're helping the team win games. But I need Eralus Chapman.
Though.
Yeah,
don't forget
though none of that shit. None of that shit's tolerated. None of that shit's allowed. So Domingo and Eralus, you guys are already under the ice for me. But if you help us win a World Series, I won't let you drown. So the point is, though, is that Eralus Chapman, like my main cry for him is that it's what you say it is. I hope it's just that his Achilles was affecting everything, and that's why his velo was down, and that's why he couldn't locate shit, and that's why it seemed like he was physically laboring every time he threw a pitch. He wasn't doing his usual, like smuggies stare you off and then smile after. He wasn't doing any of that. He was just like licking his hand and just doing his motions. And then when he had to come off, he just walk off the field with his head down. Like, you could tell something wasn't right with the Eralus.
Yeah. I think that definitely seems to be the case. And when it comes to the sinker cutter conversation that we had, I like how Matt Blake has played off of those two pitches because they look the same coming out of the hand, right? They're both fastballs, variations of a fastball. So they're both coming out 92, 93 plus miles an hour.
Unless you're Nestor, then it comes out like 86.
Unless you're Nestor. Yeah.
So, and everyone's like, I still can't hit it.
Right. So I like those two pitches because they look the same, but the movement's totally different. The sinker's going down, or sometimes it even rises. But then you have like the cutter who's going in, which bears in toward a hitter. Yeah. So it catches them off guard. So like you have your cutter pitchers as your starters, and then the batters get used to seeing that cutter, and then like the third time around through the lineup, or the fourth time through the lineup, suddenly you have the sinker going, and they're like, oh wait, I just got
That's
used to
awesome.
the cutter. Now we got a sinker that's dipping the opposite direction. They have to adjust to that. And they're just playing that game over and over again. It's tremendous. So
Yeah.
if Domingo Germán wants to be a long-term solution in either the bullpen or the or as a starter, he's got to add one of those two pitches, and one of them has to be good. And that's
because
the
other two pitches he uses, like his changeup and sinker, I will say his sinker. All right, sorry. Honestly, that's okay. I'm gonna be real. I think his sinker is better than his fastball. He just doesn't throw his sinker as much. Like I could be. Let me look at this here. So his sinker last year had a 20% whiff rate. His fastball had a 22% whiff rate, but his sinker had the same spin rate, better exit velocity, better WOBA, better expected WOBA, and then batters bat 282 off of his fastball and 294 off his sinker. Dude, Lord, expected. Sorry. Good God, Domingo. They bat 325 off his sinker last year. So the dude just can't pitch, I guess. So maybe what we do is we just say, okay, abandon the fastball, throw the sinker, throw the cutter or something. Because if he can try to do more movement-oriented stuff than just trying to overpower hitters, then I think that'd work out a lot better for him. Because like you're saying, the thing that it used to be 4-seam, 2-seam, where you used to want to have one of the fastballs that kind of rises and one that kind of drops and cuts in. And now it's kind of changed into cutter sinker. And it's like you have one that like usually sometimes rises when it cuts out, and then one that just drops in as it sinks. Like the best example of that is Corbin Burns. That's like those are two of his pitches that he throws in a good amount of like percentage of the time, and he's dominating. He's like one of the best pitchers in baseball with that combination. So it's like Domingo already throws that sinker. So if he can add that cutter and honestly kind of just displace his fastball, which is already getting teed off on, I think he'd see a big leap in his performance. So I agree with you 100%. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah. So, that's my take on Domingo Germán, however you want to say it. It's
Germán. It is what it is.
It is what it is. And, hopefully he makes this comeback and has an impact, because we could always use more bullpen arms. I don't see how we immediately give him back a starting role, even if he's replacing Luis Hill. I think that JP Sears earned it. Personally,
he pitched really well. Even though he only had one start, I think he pitched really well in that one start.
He deserves it. I mean, Domingo Germán has experience, but the guy hasn't pitched in a year, and he sucked last year. So
and even when he has a great curveball,
he's a great curveball, but everything else is below average, right? His sinker sucks. He's got to add a cutter.
Like you take away his 2017 rookie year, where he kind of actually, was decent. He hasn't had a season with an under 4 ERA. His aggregate ERA is like a 4.7. Strikeout percentage like 25%. Hard hit percentage is like 40%. Jesus. Okay. So like I want to keep the hopes up for Domingo, but my main underlying takeaway from this episode is, man, if it comes down to Domingo and Eralus, I'm like, which one am I more excited to see pitch and have back? No questions asked, Eralus Chapman. Like, I don't think that even matters. Like, it's like Eralus should be back, and if you're right, and his injury is kind of the reason he was struggling, he should be fine. Like, he should be a huge addition to this team. But Domingo, I just don't even know if when he's healthy, if he's going to be able to do what he's doing or what he's done or what we want him to do.
Yeah, exactly. So, I definitely am curious here to see what these guys do, what their impact is upon return. Definitely some reinforcements are always a bonus and a good thing. But I hope you guys enjoyed this episode breaking down. We definitely dove into some of these pitchers a little bit more than anticipated, but I think that was obviously a good thing. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe as always. And we'll catch you guys on the next Fireside Yankees episode.